It's no secret that I'm a big fan of the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, and now that the 10th anniversary is upon us and we are all collectively feeling old at the same time, I thought it would be cool to look at the long-awaited FNAF movie of last year and answer the question, was it worth the wait? Because after watching the recent interview with Dawko and Scott Cawthon and getting more of an insight on what was the thought process while making the movie, I kind of have a more different take on the movie than I did when I first saw it, if that makes sense. So let me start off with my positives before I get into my more negative or mixed opinions on the film. For starters, the practical effects and the set design are absolutely the best thing about this film in my opinion. Do you remember when all those FNAF in real life things were going around the internet around the time of the first game's peak popularity and everyone thought it was real? Well, the movie kinda does that. The pizzeria they use in this movie looks like a tangible place that could exist in real life. And I'm super happy that they got the Jim Henson Company to make proper real-life animatronics for the main cast. Thank God they just didn't use fucking shitty CGI, because I feel like the film would have really suffered from it. I also think Emma Tammy did a great job as the director. The cinematography gives off the vibes and atmosphere of the very first game, which is always appreciated. It also goes without saying, but the fan service in this movie is pretty good as well. And the story and lore decides to take more from the books rather than the games, while still including game elements, which I think was a pretty good way to go for crafting the movie universe. You want it to stand out from the other FNAF projects, but not too much to a point where it's way too different. Now let's get into things I'm more mixed or negative on. Thanks to the Scott and Dawko interview, I understand why the movie was PG-13 and not rated R, but I still feel like they could have went a little bit farther. Scott basically explained that because the kids are inside the suits and because he sees them more as hurt children rather than total monsters, he decided to have them kill more out of necessity rather than just killing for fun. Which I understand, but even if you're not going to give us brutal kills all the time, I would at least appreciate it if you leaned into the more horror aspects of the franchise just a little bit more. Which is something they did say they would do for the second movie, so that does give me hope and makes me a little bit happier. But I feel even though the animatronics are supposed to be portrayed as scared and confused kids, therefore they can't do all of the brutal kills of the movie, then why didn't you just have William do that? I'm sorry, but William Afton is easily the best part of this movie, but he is severely underutilized. I absolutely adore Matthew Lillard's performance as him, but I feel like he just doesn't get enough screen time. But to be honest, the only other characters I really cared for besides William were Mike and Abby. I really liked the direction they took Mike Schmidt's character in this film, and I thought Josh Hutcherson did a perfect job portraying him. I also think the bond that him and Abby have is pretty sweet. I didn't really care too much for Vanessa's character in this movie. She's mainly just a giant exposition dump, but other than that, she's okay, I guess. The twist of her being William's daughter the entire time was a pretty unique take on the lore in my opinion. Overall, I do think the FNAF movie was worth the wait. However, I feel that there are just little things in this movie that hold it back from being the perfect FNAF movie. I wish there were more horror elements, for example, and I wish that sometimes the kills would get a little bit more violent, and I feel that certain characters in this movie and certain plot points could have been fleshed out a little more, but at the end of the day, it's just a pretty solid first movie and not much more, and I feel like any fan of the FNAF franchise, me included, will obviously love this film. And I am very excited for the second movie, it wanting to lean into the more horror elements, the behind-the-scenes photos of all the animatronics that are going to be in the movie. FNAF 2 has the potential to really build on what made the first movie good, while fixing a few of the issues that I had with the first movie. So, overall, I think the FNAF movies have a pretty good future, and I'm glad they exist. It took a while to get to this point, but I'm happy we did, and here's to another 10 years.